This is Jocko Podcast number 184 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
It's been a while since we've done some Q&A, and there's been a lot of questions, so let's get into it. Ready, go.
Into it. Okay, question number one, Jocko. I'm having issues playing the game, quote unquote, at work. I'm quiet and friendly, but I prefer to work hard rather than stand out and talk. I found I have trouble forming more personal connections with my boss and coworkers. What are your tips?
So, look, when I talk about playing the game, I'm not talking about the fact that you have to change your entire personality profile to start to connect with people. That's not what I'm saying. You don't have to go from being someone that's, what they say, quiet and friendly, to, you don't have to become some chatty extrovert running around making small talk with anybody. And on top of that, there's a little bit of a statement here that says, I'd rather work hard, as if these are mutually exclusive things, which they are certainly not. So this forming relationships with people and playing the game does not interfere with your work at all. I'm not saying that you sit around and talk when there's work to be done, but there's going to be natural breaks in whatever you're doing. There's going to be moments where the action pauses and you get a chance to connect with somebody. So that's fine. So what are some tips how would you do this? So I thought about this you want to start with something small, right? But you want to engage. This is the key point. I don't just want to throw something at you. I don't want to talk at you. And besides, when it's much easier just to let someone talk about themselves. So what my advice in this particular question is to tell them something about yourself, like something minor about yourself, but then that kind of ties into something that you can ask them. And then they can talk to you, because most people like to talk about themselves. So you ask them a question about themselves, and then you go. So maybe something slightly related to work, so it's not just some random statement that you're making. You'd say, what we did it yesterday at work here reminded me of something, right? It's reminded me of something else, and then maybe it reminded me of a movie. Hey, you know what we were doing yesterday? It reminded me of this movie. Have you seen that movie? And at least you're going to get, well, no, because I don't watch a lot of movies. Or no, I haven't seen that movie. Or, oh, I've seen that movie. If it's a popular movie, but chances are they've seen it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a conversation going. And that's all we're looking for. We're not looking to turn into like chatty catty. We're just trying to build relationships with people. So you know who they are. So they know who you are. That's what we're talking about. Nothing crazy. Start small, build from there. Yeah. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and through that building process, what I kind of found is and I guess maybe this is a little tactical thing you can kind of throw out whenever, but when people give you advice or they tell you something about themselves, that's something, I don't know, whatever the story is, right? And maybe some strategy they use to do XYZ, it can be super small. If you let them know that you remembered, like in the future, later on when you see them again, you say, I remembered what you said last week, just tie it in this. Yeah, and just say,
you, Echo Charles.
And it can be the smallest
little that purple belt, mental jujitsu. I like it.
It can be the smallest thing. And it just makes you feel good. So that person will just essentially feel more open with you. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of like a little mentor.
This guy really pays attention to me.
Oh yeah, makes him feel valuable, all that stuff, just on that small level, So as far as building little relationships, I'd say that's a cool thing to kind of remember to do if you can.
I'd say that's a cool kind of thing to remember too.
All right, there you go. There you go. Approved.
Nicely
Next
done.
question, Jocko. May I ask your advice for addressing a cowboy, quote unquote, mentality among teams working in dangerous environments? How would you shift a culture to kill complacency, to aggressively identify and mitigate risk as a point of professional pride?
Okay. This is something that we'll definitely saw it in the SEAL teams, see it all the time in the civilian sector, construction companies, power companies where people are doing dangerous work, right? policing, firefighting, anything that has any element of danger, you definitely see this. And like I said, certainly saw in the SEAL teams. And the answer to this is a common answer for many leadership situations is you have to explain why. So let me put it in a little context. What you have to do is you have to say, hey, let me explain to you what happens when someone gets hurt or injured on this job. Okay, first of all, we get the loss of that person on the job. The job that we're working on, the project that we're working on, it falls back. There's paperwork that has to be filed, which, by the way, the paperwork hurts the progress of our project as well. Our budget's impacted because now we got to bring someone else on board. We got to train them. We take a reputational hit as a company, right? What kind of a company can't do a job without getting someone hurt, right? I mean, this isn't a high bar. Mm-hmm. It's not a very high bar to say, hey, can you complete this task without getting someone injured?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we got hey, you know what, our company, we get a lot of people hurt. Well, what does that tell you about the company? It's a reputational hit. Who are you going to hire? You're not going to hire the one that's got people getting hurt all the time. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And what does that do? What does that do to your reputation in terms of everything else? Because if you're getting a bunch of people hurt, how can I expect you to keep your timelines? How can I expect you to stay on budget? So it's those things. It's that kind of reputation that you get if you are getting people hurt. And then also, what does it do? What does it say about your team if you got people getting hurt? And again, this is what I'm talking about is a conversation that you're having with the group, with the team. You're saying, look, what kind of a team are we if we got people getting hurt? What does that say about us? It says we're lackadaisical. It says we're complacent. It says we don't pay attention. What does it say about our leadership? If we got guys getting hurt, what does that say about our leadership? It says we don't care about our people. Which, by the way, it says we don't care about our people. It says we don't care about our job. It says we don't care about our reputation. It says we just don't damn care. Mm. And what does it say about you, the individual? Well, you know what it says about you, an individual? If you get hurt, you know what it says about you? You're a knucklehead and you got hurt. You couldn't follow the procedures. You didn't follow the procedures. You thought you were smart and you got complacent and now you got hurt. So these are the things. When I talk about explaining why, those are where I'm going to start. And now I'm going to explain and connect the dots so that the individual see that someone getting hurt is actually the least professional thing that you can do. From a leadership perspective, if I let one of my guys get hurt, that's just the least professional thing I can do. Mm-hmm. From an individual contributor perspective, if I'm getting hurt, guess what? I didn't follow procedures. Okay, look, are there accidents that happened? Yes, there are. But what I'm saying is if you get an accident that could have been prevented, that should have been prevented, and I, as an individual, let it happen, that is absolutely my fault. It's like when you got a guy getting ready for an MMA fight and they get cut. Mm. They weren't wearing headgear. And it's like, look, I get it, but that was dumb. And I've had that happen. I mean, I've had it happen with my fighters. I've seen it happen all kinds. It happens in the UFC all the time, right? You got a fight coming up. You're going to fight for the title, for the UFC title. You're going to make possibly millions of dollars. You're going to be the champion of the world. Oh, 2 weeks out, got a cut. Got a cut on my head. Blew out my ACL doing takedown defense, right? Look, I get it. Accidents happen, but what was really happening right at that moment? Was it a random accident or were we doing something that we shouldn't have been doing? Yeah. So if we start to lean towards, look, having accidents is actually an unprofessional thing to do. It's a weak thing to do. It's a bad thing to do. When we let it happen, it hurts everyone, not just the individual involved. That's the attitude that we kind of come with. I had in the Navy, you have like alcohol programs. Yeah. So, hey, this is our program for, alcohol. Here's how we're trying to combat having people have alcohol-related incident. And when I was at TradeEt, they had someone come in to like give us a talk about alcohol. And then when they got done, the guy says, okay, sir, I was the guy in charge. He goes, what's your alcohol policy? And I didn't have one. And I was like, okay, hey, cool. I'll come up with one. Here's the alcohol policy. If you get hurt, if you get drunk and you can't, if you get drunk and you get in trouble or you get in a fight or you get arrested or you get a DUI and you take time away from being deployable, you are doing Al-Qaeda's job for them. There's the alcohol policy. So now all of a sudden it's not like, hey, cool, we're like, yeah, rah, rah. No, all of a sudden it's, hey, man, do we want to help the enemy by taking ourselves off the battlefield? There's nothing more that Al-Qaeda wants than for this SEAL to be arrested for DUI and non-deployable. You just did Al-Qaeda's job for you.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that I'm going to build the culture around.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing you can do with people that have that cowboy mentality. You shift it so that cowboy mentality becomes the thing that hurts our reputation, that hurts the company reputation, and it hurts our individual personal reputation.
Yeah.
As a man, I couldn't even prevent my shift from having someone get injured.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Yep. Like it feeds into their professional pride, especially when you use the word unprofessional.
Oh yeah.
You know, like
that's
no one wants to be
word.
Yeah, man. You knew what you're doing on that one. And then on the flip side, if you say consummate professional, right? Ooh, that's a good one. If you're, man, you could do. It doesn't even matter the job. You can have your own lawn mowing business when you're 13 years old. If someone says, hey, that kid's a consummate professional, you're like, hell yeah.
I'm gonna have to push back a little bit. I don't know if there's too many situations where you would say a 13-year-old lawnmower. Now we know that Mark, in the way the Warrior Kid, is heavily involved in lawn mowing with Mark's meticulous mowing.
Yes sir, he is.
But I don't even know if I'd call him a consummate professional.
Hey, I wouldn't either. But if you were
He's
to
working
do so,
towards it.
If you were to do so, Mark would feel really good if you said
That's what I'm saying is you can't be just throwing words around.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's
you
true.
can't just throw around consummate professional about mowing lawns.
Yeah. That's
now
true.
let's say the guy was a greenskeeper, like on a golf course.
Sure.
Now that person could be a consummate professional because he's got to dial stuff in, and then maybe I guess you get to a certain level of just straight landscaping where, oh, you know what? The pipe exploded. Oh, Jocko came in. He had that whole thing resodded, reseeded. Took him 4 hours. That guy is a consummate professional. So I guess I'll take it back.
Well,
I'm just saying, reserve it. Don't play with it.
Yeah.
Okay, don't play with that.
Flying that thing around. Yes. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, makes sense. Well, the man, that was very clever on your part.
What was?
When you said you're doing Al-Qaeda's job for you? Because think about it. I mean, there's
nothing worse for a guy in the military to hear
pride.
is you are actually helping the enemy right now.
Yeah. And then how you say it, like you name names, it's not like you said the enemy, which I get, that's good too, but it's way better to be like you're doing and you name because JP will say that too, right? Where he'll be like, there was a sign or something about a sign, or maybe he'll just say it. He'll be like, your enemy thanks you for not giving 100% today.
Yeah.
Right. Remember that one? And it's good. That's a good one. And it sounds cool too. I get it. But it is real general. So you hear that 10 times or every day or whatever. You're like, okay, cool. It sounds cool, but it won't really affect your professional pride. All the time. Sometimes it does. Sometimes. But if you name the enemy, like if you have some adversary, and they thank you, that person, whatever, John Smith, for not giving 100%, it might feed into you. So you saying Al-Qaeda thanks you, for getting arrested. So I'm like, yeah, man. Think about it from the flip side, right? What if you think of like an Al-Qaeda fighting team, right? And one of them gets like one of their effective fighters gets caught, I don't know, doing something that they don't like, gambling, going to a strip club, I don't know, whatever. And they say, hey, you're not allowed to fight anymore for us. So he gets like exiled or whatever. Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
We want them to do that. We might even send them some strip club recommendations. You see what I'm saying? So it's you're literally doing that.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. That's good.
Check.
Jocko, you clever guy. All right, next question. Hi, Jocko. You answered a question about complainers and said you would listen to because it should be listen to them, right?
Yes.
You said you would listen to them because you can learn what the problems are. I like it, and people like to be heard, but how do you handle chronic complainers? the type of people who become cancerous. I'm a huge fan of extreme ownership. Thanks for your time.
This is a calls once again for my favorite general remedy in leadership situations is you take this person and you put him in charge. Put him in charge.
Yeah.
And this is one of those classic things where someone says, hey, why are we even doing it this way? And you say, oh, Echo, you don't like that? Cool. Why don't you come up with a plan and you go execute it however you want?
Yeah.
And that does one of two things. Either they say okay and they step up and then they have to figure out how hard the task is and they have to get it done, and they learn from it and they get humbled by it and they recognize the burden of responsibility that a leader actually has, which is all good. Or they just say no, and they stop complaining because they don't want to get tasked with anything again. Now, what you got to be careful with is a lot of these answers that I give, you could go like in the wrong direction. So what I mean by that is Echo says, hey, I don't like the way we're doing this. And I go, okay, well then you're in charge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I do it like that. It's a punishment. It's a punitive thing. Oh, yeah. That is absolutely not what I'm talking about. I say, you know what, Echo? You're pointing out some good stuff. You're pointing out some definite shortfalls in the way that this is happening. I'll tell you what, why don't you actually just take responsibility for this and you can run this task and you can make this happen? Because I think, just based on some of the things you've pointed out already, I'm not even calling them complaints. Yeah. Based on some of the things you pointed out already, I think you could probably improve upon our process quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful. I'm not talking about being a jerk to someone. Yeah. I'm talking about action, and this is the thing. It's like there's this thing where what I'm doing, I'm not just playing the game. Have I ever told this in jiu-jitsu? I'm like, hey, if you want to set me up with the choke so that you can get my arm, you have to actually do the choke. You have to actually apply the pressure. If you don't apply the pressure, I'm not defending it. My arm's not going to go where you want it. You have to actually do it. And if I don't defend it the way you expect me to, then you just choke me. Yeah. It's the same thing here. I'm not saying you just say, well, why don't you do it then? No, you have to actually say, hey, listen, I think this is what's going on. I think you have some good points. Why don't you take lead on this and we'll see if you can, remedy the situation, because I think you got a pretty good chance of doing it. Yeah. I'm not doing this as a punitive thing. I'm doing it because it's the best thing for the team. You've got a legitimate complaint. You've got a bunch of them. Yep. Let's get you in a position where you can sort some of those things out. Yeah. So that's that. When you get people that are complaining, first of all, hear them out. And maybe that's good enough, right? Hey, listen to them. And once again, I'm not saying you listen to them while your brain is elsewhere and you're not thinking. You actually listen to what they're saying. You're engaged. You really do go for the choke. Yeah. Go for it. Yeah. Listen to what they're saying. Maybe there's some solutions you can come up with. Mm-hmm. But then if that doesn't work, and even after you listen to them and you explain to them why things aren't the way they want, they still want to complain about it. Cool. That's fine. Awesome. Why don't you take lead on this? And that way you can sort out some of these issues. Appreciate it.
Kind of like Leif said that one time. It's kind of hard to complain about a plan when it's your plan.
Yeah, that is the truth.
Yeah, makes sense.
God, I'm so stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, this plan sucks that I came up with. But the chronic complaining, because you could kind of, people who complain a lot, it's easy to be like, oh, they're chronic complainers, right? But if there's constantly, we'll say, chronic problems, that might induce chronic complaining. I'm not saying that's the case, obviously, because I know that there is such thing as chronic complainers, 100%. But at the very least, like how you say, oh yeah, put them in charge of something, or listen to them, and they'll point, listen to what they're complaining about or whatever. You might actually get turned on to all these solvable problems, And if you make someone take lead in a situation, right? And you know how it's kind of like that concept of like taking extreme ownership, and then what if they do, like say, yeah, it is your fault. And then you get all mad, kind of thing. It's like, oh, so you didn't really do that. It's like, so if you put someone else in charge of something, you're really putting them in charge. Yeah. Like, what if they run? What if they take lead and they solve all the problems? And they don't come. Awesome, right?
We're happy.
Yeah, exactly right. So you don't treat this action or this discourse as like something to get back at the complainer.
It's not just a setup.
Yeah.
It's a real move.
It's a real deal. Yeah.
And that's you just made this point that I made, which is one of the best leadership tools that is completely overlooked by people all the time, is very, very simple to do, and that's just to listen to what people are saying. I know it sounds crazy, but I run into all the time leaders in all kinds of levels, all kinds of situations, and the biggest problem they have is they don't even listen to anyone else. They won't listen.
Yeah.
So when you're in a leadership position, try this. Be quiet and listen to what people are saying. Listen to what they're complaining about. Listen to what suggestions they have. Listen to what advice they give. Listen to their recommendations. Listen. Yeah. Just listen sometimes. You're going to be in a much better spot.
Yeah. And even like you saying that out loud sounds real obvious, but it's not. Because even a lot of times, like if you don't listen, I'm thinking of myself, like all the many trillions of times that I haven't listened when I should have. Mm-hmm. Most of the time we'll say, I don't mean to not listen. I don't mean to be like, it's not like I'm like hearing noise and being like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're dumb. What you say doesn't mean anything. It's not that. It's more that I'm like focused so hard on what I'm thinking or my way or whatever. Like I'm just of course, naturally, it's mine. I've been thinking about it for years now, kind of thing. So I'm so basically dug into myself on my own thing that I'm just not paying attention that much. I'm like working so hard down this tunnel that like I can't look out of the tunnel kind of thing. So you don't really mean to, but when you're in the situation, it's like it's not that easy.
It's and you know what it is also? It's detachment.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you're talking. Yeah. You got to step back, detach, listen to what people are saying. I do this all the time. It's such an easy move.
Yeah,
it's such an easy move. You just watch. You just listen. Even like in jiu-jitsu, you do this. Where you're like, the person wants to move around a bunch. Cool, I'll let them move around a bunch. Let's see where they're going. I'm just going to listen to their moves, Yeah,
and that's a good way to put it, man. Just listen to their moves. Just listen. And yeah, if you primarily focus on that listening, then like you habitually be able to do it way better. Because like, again, like back to it's not like you're not doing it with malicious intent. Yeah. You're not shutting them down. It's almost like you like interrupters, right? Chronic interrupters, people who interrupt you all the time. Some of the time, a lot of the time, whatever. We'll say half of the time estimate. It doesn't feel like they're doing it because they don't want to hear what you have to say. Sometimes it's that, for sure. But sometimes it's almost like they have this tone of like, dang, I don't think I finished my point as good as I wanted to. Yeah. Almost.
They're
it's
doing
like that
for
tone
them.
For themselves. Yeah. Because they're so committed to their message and what they've been thinking the whole time. And if you're not signing right onto it, it's, man, I must not have said it clear enough. You see what I'm saying?
I had to like tighten up my kids on just straight, they just wouldn't let each other talk. It's just interrupt. Yeah. And I think it was my son for sure. And he looked at me and he says, Dad, you've been teaching us to be aggressive our whole lives, and now all of a sudden you're telling us just to sit back. Oh, that was funny.
Did you tell him that that's the dichotomy?
I said that's the dichotomy.
I know you did.
Of course.
Yeah. All right, next question. What is the most important issue you've ever changed your mind about?
This is one of those things where I'm sure this is one of those questions where I should have like some answer about some specific subject or something. You know what I mean? Like I know what answer is desired. I know what type of answer is desired, but the reality is, for me, taking ownership of things, right? Mm-hmm. This wasn't really like I changed my mind to where what I used to say, I'm going to blame everyone, and then all of a sudden I said, you know what? That's not the right policy to have. I need to start taking extreme ownership. I didn't do that, but it was just a thing that built and developed inside my brain, and I think it's the most important thing that I've ever sort of recognized or conclusion that I've come to. Now, it's not a change, but I'm sure at some point my attitude wasn't like, I'll just take ownership of that, which it is now. Right. But at some point, I'd say, well, that's not really my responsibility. Right, you know what I mean? Of course. Yeah. That's a natural thing to say. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, the next, and this is interesting, but the other, and this one's kind of more of a, I can pin it down a little bit closer to an answer that someone would like. And this is, once again, it's going to be a little bit strange, but the other thing is the dichotomy of leadership. And this is the thing about the dichotomy of leadership. And I actually didn't really recognize this until the last muster. And as I was thinking about the dichotomy of leadership, maybe it was off of a question. Maybe I think it was actually before. No, actually, it was before we even started. I was just like reviewing notes and thinking about the dichotomy of leadership. And one of the most important things about the dichotomy of leadership is that the reason that I came to the conclusion, the reason that I got to the dichotomy of leadership. In getting there, let me rephrase that. In getting to a point where I said there's a dichotomy of leadership, what I had to do was I had to admit to myself that I was wrong about everything. Okay. That's what I had to do. In order for the idea of the dichotomy of leadership to escape my brain, to get out, to become a full thought, what I had to do, I had to admit to myself that I was actually wrong about everything. So I'll give you real easy examples. One of my things that I used to tell guys all the time, you got to be aggressive. Yeah. You got to be aggressive. That's how you got to be. In order for the dichotomy of leadership, I had to admit, you know what? Sometimes being aggressive doesn't work. Yeah. Right? I used to say, you know what? As a leader, you got to stand up. You got to be loud. And then I realized, you know what? I see leaders that are too loud. I had to admit that I was wrong about that. That sometimes that was wrong. I had to admit that I was wrong about keeping things simple. Like, hey, you know what? This is one of the most fundamental laws of combat. You got to keep things simple. And then I had to admit that sometimes people keep things too simple. Even this fact right here, right? In order to admit that I was wrong, I had to be humble. And I used to preach, and I still preach humility as being like the most important thing. But guess what? There are people, and there are even me, where there's times and places where you can be too humble. Yeah. And so this idea that there's a dichotomy to everything, it's something that the original thought for me was, it came from me having one-sided opinion, and then realizing that, and I'm almost positive, I don't remember crystal clear, but I'm almost positive that the original thought that I realized there was a dichotomy to was being aggressive. And again, this is all kind of coming to fruition as I'm teaching guys at TradeAt, and Leif was running the junior officer training course, and I used to give them this little, and I remember writing, I remember saying to myself, you know what, I got to tell guys that they can go too far with being aggressive, and they can go too far with barking orders, that's where it came from. Yeah. And if I wouldn't have been able to change my mind, right? Because that's what this question was, changing my mind about something. The biggest thing probably ever in my life was understanding that just about every characteristic that a person can have, that a leader can have, can go too far and can become a negative characteristic. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've changed my mind on.
Interesting. Yeah, that aggressive one, that makes sense. Because being aggressive is one of the more effective ways to straight up, quote unquote, get things done. For sure. Right? Do it and it'll be done. Do it, Don't wait, don't hesitate.
Yeah. Oh, there's a problem in a building. Let's sit back and wait until that problem starts. No, you got to be aggressive.
Yeah. But then and jiu-jitsu will teach you all kinds of lessons like this, where if you're going to spring a trap on somebody or something, animal, person, whatever, what's the best type of person that you can catch with a trap? Probably an aggressive one, they can set themselves up to get trapped if they're aggressive, like an animal who's real hungry, Yeah. Hesitating, if an animal's hesitant, just hesitant, maybe sees things develop a little bit before they take certain action or whatever, that'd be harder to trap.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yeah, this is the thing this is what makes humility important, is it's hard to come to grips with the dichotomy of leadership, because if you don't have the humility to sometimes say, you know what, you're right, that, you know what, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
This plan isn't what I thought it should be.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do that. That's why it's hard to really get a grip on the dichotomy of leadership, and that's what makes it so important. That's what makes it the answer to so many questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will come, like, someone will come up and say, they'll have their counterpoint to what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, let me think of a situation where you have to provide a counterpoint. If somebody comes to me and says, you know what? Being aggressive isn't always good. Sometimes if you're aggressive, all you do is you run to your death. Now, an egotistical Jocko would say, negative. You're wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm right. And I would dig in that position. Mm-hmm. And when you dig in a position, you can't maneuver anymore. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually stuck. So this is a classic thing to do. Also, when I'm arguing with somebody. If you come to me and you say, I think we should do this, method B, I don't say no, because I think we should do it method A. That's what I think. And you think we should do it method B. You come to me, I think we should do this method B. I think you're wrong. You know what I say? Okay, well, I think you got some good points on method B. Oh, all of a sudden,
yeah.
All of a sudden we're in a totally different scenario.
Oh yeah.
I just totally flipped the script on you.
Yeah.
And you know what I say is there's some good points that you have. If you watch people debate, it's really a little slick move. But you don't see politicians do it because they're so dug in. Yeah. They can never think they're wrong.
Yeah.
And they can never, and what they also are afraid of, they're afraid if they admit they're wrong about something, they'll look bad.
Yeah.
Whereas if they said, you know what, that's a good point. That's actually a good point. I'm going to need to consider that. I've never really thought of that viewpoint before. You know what? I'm going to assess that. But I think I think there's some validity to what you just said. When's the last time you heard a politician say that?
Never. I don't think.
And then what happens is, in this day and age, the supporters of that politician, they don't recognize the valid point either.
Yeah.
It's just no.
Yeah.
So we get people that aren't thinking, and it's very hard to hold dichotomies in your head that this can be right and that can be right. There's an aggressive approach and there's a non-aggressive approach. There's a direct approach and there's an indirect approach. And both of them can be functional. It's really hard to get a grip on that. And yet it's the answer to so many questions. It's the answer to the subordinate that comes to you and says, we should not be doing it this way. If your reaction isn't to diametrically oppose what they're saying, but instead to actually take their side and say, I agree with you. You've got some really good points. Let's see how this would play out. Talk me through it.
Yeah.
Look, you can't even. You're like, wow, you know. It's like a move. Yeah. It's like a jiu-jitsu move. Yeah. And it works.
Yeah.
So there's some things I've changed my mind on about. My mind is open though.
Yeah.
I will change my mind if new evidence presents itself. I'll change my mind in a heartbeat. Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. Present me with new evidence.
Yeah. What about I would think anyway, after kind of thinking about it, where I think generally speaking we do kind of respect someone who can change their mind. And we all see it once people's digging into their opinion, and saying all kinds of weird, wacky stuff to try to defend themselves, and you're like, that's not what we're talking about, kind of thing. You see it, it's clear. So it seems obvious, you should change your mind or at least open up your mind and like how you said, hey, I'll give that some consideration. Mm-hmm. I'll look into it, and if you're right, shoot, I think you're right. I think that's a better way to do it, or whatever the case is. And then I guess technically this is a dichotomy too, where you can't do that too much, because if you're always changing your mind with I don't know, we'll say a politician.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Every time the opposing view or some other view comes in, you're like, dang, I didn't look at it like that, or maybe I'll look back or look into that more. And then do it again and again and again. It's like, Brad, does this guy know anything?
Because guess what you're talking about?
What?
There's a dichotomy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And if you go too far and you change your opinion all the time, and then you become indecisive, and so that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But if you're the other side of the spectrum and you're completely dug in and you never change your mind, that doesn't work either. What do you need to do? You need to balance the dichotomies. The dichotomies between being flexible and inflexible. If you become ultra flexible where you're just going with whatever anyone's saying, that's not good.
Yeah.
You need to find the middle ground. That's what the dichotomy of leadership is.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people to comprehend that.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to see that where they draw that line.
Yes, that
because
is
they
it,
think,
where they
well,
draw
you
the line.
know, I'll never change my opinion on this. Okay, you just told me where you stand.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I like that very much.
Yeah,
because new information can come to light.
Yeah. Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, that's where they stand, right, in that dichotomy or whatever. Because I think part of it, and it's part of it is like, yeah, they don't want to be wishy-washy, you know. But the other part of that is, I'm saying if they always change their mind, or if they're so easily to be like, oh, okay, maybe we'll do it your way, or whatever.
Flip-flopper.
I think they come off like they don't know anything.
For sure.
Like, so if you don't know anything, should you even be in that position? Like, I don't want you to be the congressman if you don't know anything, kind of thing, right? That's the feeling. So, and now with that, that's the feeling that people are trying to avoid when they dig in.
Yeah.
They don't want to admit they're wrong, because if I admit I'm wrong, that means for what I didn't know, you know, kind of thing. So it's like, no, bro, you don't draw the line right there. You draw the line a couple steps down the road. Yeah. Be open a little bit.
Give yourself some room to maneuver.
Yeah,
don't dig in.
Yeah, some room to maneuver. Next question. How does one detach when getting personally attacked and take extreme ownership with false claims? And what does one do when a subordinate always goes above the chain of command instead of working out issues with the coworker?
Okay, this isn't the clearest question that I've ever received. I'm going to try and, I'm not sure if I completely understand it, but I'm going to try and sort of answer to the best of my ability. I think what we're talking about here is that someone is telling me that something is my fault, and that is a false claim. That's the question, right?
I think
like
so,
you're
yes.
making a false claim and saying like, this is your responsibility, Jocko. You were supposed to press record.
Right.
And it's false because I wasn't supposed to press record.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say like,
yeah. Or maybe like record was pressed. Like there is no issue, you know?
Well, then why would that become a personal attack?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't. Huh?
So the personal attack is, Jocko, you didn't press record.
Yeah.
And now the question is, what do I do then? Because we both know who's in charge of pressing record here.
Yeah.
Who is?
Me.
Okay, so you're in charge of press and record.
Yeah.
If you all of a sudden we are 40 minutes into a podcast and we haven't pressed record, the record button hasn't been pressed, and all of a sudden it comes to light, and you say, Jocko, you didn't press record.
Right.
Now, what this person is saying, that's a false claim.
Gotcha.
That's not my responsibility. It's truly not my responsibility. Right. I'm not going to take it. Why should I be doing that?
Yeah.
And you know what I'm going to say? You know what I'm going to say.
Yes, sir, I do.
Which is, you know what? It is my responsibility because I'm here. It's primarily my voice that's being recorded. And from now on, I will make sure that gets recorded. It's my fault. I will take care of it from now on. By the way, now what is your job responsibilities in this whole podcast? Nothing. No. You have nothing to do.
Yeah.
If you're not pressing record, you're nothing to do.
Yeah.
So how does that feel?
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. You don't like that. Mm-hmm. But when I take away that responsibility, you're actually going to come and claw it back from me. Mm-hmm. You're going to say, you know what? Actually, you know, it was your fault when that happened. But you know what? From now on, since you screwed it up, I'm going to take ownership of it. And you know what I say? I say, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, good point. Since you are over there with the recorder and since you're a technical guy and I'm not, that makes a lot of sense. Why don't we go with that? From now on, you own it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have dropped the ball last time. You know.
Yep.
So that's that. So there we go. I own it. I fix it. By the way, if you don't want responsibility back, if you just say, cool, yeah, you press record from now on. Okay, cool. I will. Yeah. And then guess what? I'll start thinking about how much I need you around here. Yeah. Because really, what else do you bring to the table?
I know.
All right. So that's question number one. Mm-hmm. The question number two, as far as detaching, so I don't get emotional, that's if someone is blaming me, if you start blaming me for something, I actually look at that right out of the gate. I see that as a psychological victory for me. Because you're blaming me. Like you're not taking ownership. I already won. Yeah. I already won. So I'm not getting emotional about that. They're blaming me because they don't have the wherewithal to actually take ownership themselves. I see that as a weakness of theirs and I'm fine with it. And that's why I'm not going to I don't need to get emotional because I'm sitting there going, wow, this person just served me up on a silver platter. The fact that they don't want to take ownership and they're going to give it to me. Are you kidding me? I'll take this all day long. Another thing is, and I've said this before, I can't be disrespected by someone that doesn't even respect themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't disrespect me if you don't even respect yourself. If you're just, like a bum in the street is where the thing came from.
Yeah.
Someone that's just a drunk bum laying in his own vomit and wants to, look at me and say, you look like a dirt bag.
Yep.
It's like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
Carry on with your day.
Yeah.
That you're not going to affect me. So how, in the same vein, how can I be disrespected by you when you blame me for something when I realize what's happening right now is you don't even have enough respect for yourself to take ownership of something?
Yeah.
This is just a win.
Yeah.
So that's the second part. And I think the third part of the question is a subordinate that goes up the chain of command instead of working out the issues with the coworker. That's pretty easy. I'm not going to solve those problems for you.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a problem down the chain of command with your coworker, your peer, and you guys aren't working it out, and you want me to solve your problem? No, you go figure it out and come back to me with a solution. Now, I'll do that a couple times. If eventually they can't come up with a solution, guess what I have? I have a problem. I have a real problem, and I will solve it, and they're not going to like my solution because it probably involves neither one of them being there anymore. Extreme case. But what I will do is I say, okay, come and read me the facts. You really want me to make a decision about this? Cool, I'll do it. But I always felt horrible. In fact, I don't even know if I ever did this, going to my boss to make a decision about something that I should have agreed with my peer. Because you know what? I'd rather say, hey, you know what? You want to do it your way, Echo? Fine. Let's go with it. It's close enough. You want to take the lead? Cool. You take the lead. I'll support you. No problem. That's what I'm here for. I want the team to win. I know you're concerned about you, and I know that's fine. That's fine. I'm here for the team. So let's do it your way so that it works out.
Yeah.
Not going to my boss and complaining. That's just ridiculous.
And then that's another one where I don't think I've ever been in a corporate scenario, but it seems like that's easy to see in other people, like where, how like a situation where, let my subordinate take lead. It seems like that could be a solid, almost obvious answer for people.
Yeah.
Except myself, like I don't always point that inward. I'm sure there's like people out there where it's like, oh, this will solve probably a lot of your problems. Just look at it this way and do it and do that. Let one of your subordinates like take lead on the stuff. And I would predict, as far as that goes, that most people would be pretty surprised. Like, oh yeah, I guess I should do that.
Yeah.
At this point.
So you're saying it's a pretty obvious solution once you hear it.
Yeah.
But you're also saying that's a difficult solution to actually execute because most people put in the situation don't remember it.
Yeah, they don't remember to point it inwards.
Yeah.
Even like literally you could be getting this advice like right now. You could be getting this advice, but hey, yeah, Jocko, that sounds like good advice. And then they'll go like back to work and it applies to someone else, Yeah. It's like you don't realize it. Like, man, I should do that, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the trouble with learning. That's the trouble with learning because it's hard to apply it yourself.
Yeah.
Once again, it's like jujitsu. You can watch. I can show you how to do it, and then you can watch me do it, and then I can move your limbs around so that you do it, and then we do a drill where we drill the move 20 times, and then you get into a competition, and the move is there, and you don't execute it. You don't execute it correctly because you haven't done it enough.
Yep.
You have to do the move.
Gotta do the move.
You gotta do the move.
Next question. So, I'm watching Deadliest Catch. It's a fishing show. Wait, crabs, right?
Crabbing show, yeah. Alaskan king crabs.
Respect. So I'm watching Deadliest Catch. And a deckhand wasn't paying attention and let too many small crabs into the tank. This is big trouble for the captain. So the kid admits his mistake and apologizes. Captain, you're fired. I've watched you screw up for years. What's the message here?
Yeah, so it's the captain that fires, sees the mistake and the captain says you're fired.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this is This tells me a couple things. This tells me a few things. This tells me a lot of things, right? First of all, the boss watched the deckhand screw up for years. Mm-hmm. My assumption is that he didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. You watch someone screw up for years. How is the deckhand going to improve if he doesn't get counseled on what his shortfalls are? Okay, so that's one, that could have happened, right? That's one assumption. Let's make the other assumption. The other assumption is that the captain did counsel the deckhand and watched him screwed up for years and told him, you better not do that, you better not do that, you better not do that. And he's now done it again. And guess what? He's getting fired. Mm-hmm. So that's understandable. So I think the question is implying kind of like, hey, boss, this was my fault. Shouldn't have let that happen. And now the boss can say, oh, well, since you're taking ownership of that, that's no problem. We'll let it go. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen. So if you have a concept in your brain that you think that when you take ownership for something that you're immune then from the punishment of the mistake you've made, that's not true. Yeah. That's absolutely not true. Taking ownership of a mistake does not relieve you of responsibility of that mistake. In fact, the opposite of true. When you take ownership of a mistake, you're taking ownership of the mistake and you are raising your hand and saying, I own the mistake. And if there's punishment to be meted out, it needs to land on me. Mm-hmm. That's what ownership is. Ownership is not a get out of jail free card. Yeah. You know what? It's my fault. We joke about this. Yeah. It's my bust. Yeah. Hey, my bust on that one. It won't happen again. Yeah. So now everyone just ignores it? No. This is a serious violation. Yep. Having the wrong size crabs is the kind of thing that gets you rolled up by the fish and game department, and all of a sudden you're getting shut down. This is serious business. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, are at stake here. And this kid isn't doing his job correctly. So either the boss, the captain, had mentored him and was fed up, which it makes him a good boss. And this was his last warning, and he failed his last warning, and there you go. Mm-hmm. Hey, I've been watching you screw up. I told you screwed up. I've written you up about screwing up, and I told you not to let this happen again, and you just let it happen again. You're fired. Mm-hmm. Or maybe the boss wasn't that squared away, and he hadn't counseled him. He hadn't had the hard conversations early with him to square him away. Mm-hmm. And now, the boss leaves something to be desired because he's just the first offense that he talks to him about is, hey, you're fired. Mm-hmm. When I took ownership of the blue on blue in extreme ownership, first chapter, I could have been fired for that. Yeah. I could have been fired. My boss could have said, yeah, you're right. This is your fault. We can't have that happen out here. You're fired. And you know what I said? Roger that. It's not, hey, I own this. Please let me go.
Yeah. I took responsibility.
Now here, I will say this though. So taking extreme ownership is not a get out of jail free card, but I will tell you this, if you make excuses, it is going to be worse in 99% of the situations. Yeah. Well, the small crabs snuck in when I wasn't looking. That's not my fault. Yeah. Tactical crabs on the move, right? Yeah. Then you just look like an idiot, right? So then another thing that this brings up is this idea of preemptive ownership, and that is if you take ownership of something, you don't want to take ownership after the fact. Extreme ownership, the idea of extreme ownership in its purest and most effective form isn't, hey, something went wrong and I'm now taking ownership of the mistake. That's not the best extreme ownership scenario. The best extreme ownership scenario is when you take ownership prior to the mistake happening and you realize that if there is going to be a mistake, you are going to own it. So what you're going to do is you're going to work hard to prevent that mistake from happening. That's preemptive ownership. You're taking ownership before the mistake happens. So this kid, this deckhand, could have put procedures in place to make sure no small crabs got in. It sorted them out properly. Mm-hmm. But instead he thought, oh, you know what? It'd be no big deal. I'll just take ownership and then they'll say it's okay. Or, I'll blame someone else or whatever he's thinking in his brain. If he says, look, if I let small crabs in here, I am going to own it and I am going to get fired. Guess what? perhaps he would have worked a little harder to prevent these small crabs from being where they weren't supposed to be. But see, when you have that out, when you think you can just blame someone else, that allows you to be slack.
Yeah.
When you think, well, this isn't really my responsibility. That's why when I work with companies, and they'll have some thing that's going wrong, some problem, some procedure that's not working correctly, some timeline that's not being met. And one of the first questions I ask, and it normally like a huge step in the right direction to resolve the problem, is I go, oh, okay, who's in charge of that process? And a bunch of people will be looking around at each other, and no one's raising their hand. And the minute I see that, I go, interesting. This is the answer to me. Now we know why the process is ineffective, because no one has ownership of it. And if no one has ownership of it and the thing doesn't get done when it's supposed to get done, everyone just points at each other and says, yeah, well, it wasn't my fault. It was his fault. It was their fault. Yeah. And then no one takes ownership and no one solves it. Yeah. Whereas if you say, okay, Echo, you are in charge of this process. If it doesn't work, I'm coming after you. Now you can step up your game preemptively to prevent a mistake from occurring. Prevent the little crabs from getting in the pot.
Yep.
So taking ownership isn't a get out of jail free card. Mm-hmm. If you have a subordinate, you are actually responsible for counseling them and coaching them and mentoring them and explaining to them what the standards are so that they can meet the standards, explaining explicitly what the standards are so that they can meet those standards. And the optimal ownership takes place not only after, but more importantly, before something goes wrong. There you go.
Not to mention, you gotta take responsibility for solving the problem.
Yes, you do.
Which apparently this deckhand guy has not.
Yeah, he took ownership for the mistake. He didn't take ownership for solving the problem. He also didn't implement a solution to the problem. There's all kinds of problems
for years, by the way.
Yeah.
So there you go. Next question. What mistakes did you make early, discussed in your live podcast, that could have progressed you further?
Yeah, I think there's just some real big obvious ones. Wasted a bunch of time. You waste a bunch of time when you're young. You think you got forever and you waste time. And whether it's doing stuff that's not productive, whether it's going out, getting drunk, whatever dumb things you waste time doing, whether it's just wasting time. And you know what? Look, I'm not saying don't have fun in your life, because that's wrong answer too. That's too extreme. But what I am saying is I sometimes I had a little too much fun. Sometimes I wasn't focused on the right things. So wasted time is number one. Wasted money. Wasted a ton of money on dumb stuff. And I'd say that both of these, so wasting time, wasting money, those are like the two biggest mistakes that I've made. But I would say the root of those mistakes is that I didn't do a good job of connecting the future to the present. Yeah. Right? You just don't, when you're young, I shouldn't say that. When I was young, because I don't want to put a universal blanket of being dumb on everyone, even though you're nodding your head pretty heartily over there.
Well,
because you were probably, Well, we see a lot of people do this, right? A lot of us, we waste our time, we waste our money, and we don't connect what we're doing right now with what's going to happen in the future. And that is not a good policy to have. What we want to do, and what I try and instill with kids, with my kids, with kids that I talk about on the podcast, is I want to connect what decisions are being made right now with decisions that with the end state that you end up with in your future. So if you take advantage of your time, you're going to be in a much better place. If you save your money, you're going to be in a much better place. If you invest your money properly, you're going to be in a much better place. If you train and you treat people, if you train hard, you're going to be in a much better place. If you treat people respectfully and you build relationships, you're going to be in a much better place. If you do the opposite of those things, you're going to be in a worse place. If you treat people like dirt, it'll come back to bite you. If you waste your money, you won't have it. If you waste your time, you'll run out. So I think the biggest mistake really for me was that I failed to connect the present to the future. The only ways that I succeeded in that early on was through luck. Like, I joined the Navy, and I'm very lucky that I did, because I was immediately building my future, even though I had it wasn't my intent. Right. I bought a house that was a great. What did I buy it for? I wanted a place to live. What did I end up with? An incredible investment, enough to buy another house. That one was a little bit more intentional. Oh, okay, wait a second. If I own another house, and I was just talking about this with a friend of mine, it was like that I was explaining when, and he remembered when I got my second house, and I was like, in my mind, Donald J. Trump, the real estate landlord, like master. Yep. Right? Someone was going to be paying me rent, you know, and I had another house that I was going to live in. Mm-hmm. So that was when I started making this shift where I connected the present with the future. Yeah. So what you do today is directly correlated to where you'll end up in the future. That is in Echo's favorite sort of thread of this entire podcast.
Yes, sir.
Is playing the long war. And it took me too long to start fighting the long war. That's what I'll say. That will say the biggest mistakes from my early life.
Yeah, and really, in a way, they could be viewed as not even really mistakes, I guess. Just as more of just sort of that's the way things happen. Because most times we figure these things out later in life, when the long game starts to materialize. Because when you're early in your career, only the short game is sort of there. And then in a way, actually, no. At the end of the day, no. Because even as a little kid, you know the long game. You're familiar with it a little bit. Because like you ever had to save your money for something? Like an Optimus Prime toy, you know? Something like that. And they said, you got to save your money for it.
Yeah.
And bro, you save your money, you know? That's playing the long game.
Yeah.
As a kid, you know, it's a kid version. So it's kind of the same thing. But maybe it's not as intuitive, you know, when you're little. When you're big, when you're grown.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not intuitive. And it's the other weird thing is like someone has to tell you, but like we just talked about, sometimes when people tell you, you still just don't listen to them.
Yeah, yeah.
you know, people say, "Hey, you should really do this," and you go, "Yeah, whatever. That's for you."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
it's for you.
One of my uncle's friends won the lottery years ago, like in the 70s. And he won one of those big lotteries where he got money every year. You know, you could take the lump sum or you could take the
payments.
The payments.
Yeah.
He took the payments.
Yeah.
But won the lottery, right?
Literally won the lottery. Mm-hmm.
And so the payments lasted 20 years. Well, when you're 22, that's forever.
Yeah.
Right? That's forever.
Yeah.
And so my dad was talking to this guy that won the lottery, and now he was at like the 19-year mark.
Yeah.
And guess what he had done with all this money?
Spent it
Did he invest it in real estate? Did he start companies? What do you think he did with this money?
Spent it.
Yeah. He bought car and whatever.
Yeah. That tends
girls
to be.
And, you know, like, or whatever, dated girls and went to bars and went out for nice dinners and did that for a long time.
Yeah.
And so my dad says, hey, you know, they're talking about it. He says, well, you know, this is the last year that I'm getting my monthly payments for winning the lottery. And my dad says, what are you gonna do when the payments aren't coming in anymore? And he says, I'm gonna win again.
Dang. Sweet.
So yeah, that's planning, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, kind of.
Man, no, it's not, obviously.
It's not,
but
obviously,
man, won the lot. But that tends to go like that for lottery winners.
Yeah, apparently the lottery winning isn't a big like happiness deal.
It's bad.
Yeah,
it ends up being bad because life is a long game.
Yeah,
and no matter how you play it, the long game is the one that shakes out. You know, so if you're over here playing the short game, that's why you lose in life. If you play the short game all the time.
Yes.
And the people who play the long game, they just all you gotta do is play it. You don't even have to dominate it. Although I'm not recommending not trying to dominate. I'm not saying
try
that.
And dominate.
Try and
but
dominate.
You don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, you could come in, shoot, second to last place. But if you're playing the game, you're gonna be doing good in the long game.
When you come in second to last place in the long game, you still just beat everyone. Single other person that's playing the short game.
Yep.
You beat them all.
Yeah. And it's not
and they're over there looking around like, what just happened?
Yeah, you're so squared away. Yeah, but it's not that complicated, you know? I mean, it's not easy. It's because it's not easy. You're wired to play the short
I had to go
game.
deep on this on that last Warrior Kid podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. This. Yeah. Yes.
Just like
short-term
you
gratification.
need to get over the short-term gratification.
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest lessons a kid can learn is that my actions today will affect my future.
Yeah.
And it's hard to convince them of that.
Yeah.
It seems so distant.
Yep.
Like the future seems so distant when you're young.
Yeah.
I was having another discussion with someone the other day, a parent. And there was a level of frustration that, and it's the typical level of frustration from the parent, which was, the kid has a lot of potential, but they're like, not training the way they should be and not working the way, all that stuff. And what I tried to explain to the parent was that the potential that you're telling your kid that he has, they do not even comprehend what that means. It's not something that they can understand. It's completely intangible. Like even when you say, if you keep practicing this, you could be the champion.
Yeah.
This means you might as well say, if you keep practicing this, it means nothing to them.
Yeah.
So that's what potential is to a little kid. A little kid doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you try and convince them. You try and explain it to them. But what I recommend is instead of trying to explain to them this massive concept of what their potential is, you try and give them some short-term rewards that lead them in the right direction that are supportive of the long game, but they're easier mental connections for the kid. And the same thing applies to employees as well, right? Or you get a young employee that's, they're not thinking they could be the regional manager, right? They're just thinking they're just happy to be here. Yeah. But you're looking at them going, this is a sharp kid. Could. So you might not say, look, one day you're going to be the regional manager. Right. In 22 years. Think about that. When somebody gets hired on as whatever, and you say one day you could be the regional manager and you could make whatever, this big chunk of money. They're looking at you going, I'm not going to be here until, I'm only going to have this job for 6 months, whatever. Yeah. So what you want to do is just tie something a little bit closer to them, to their reality. Yeah. Of, hey, here's where you could get, here's where the bonus program works here. Have you seen this? You can make an extra whatever. Yeah. And it's going to move them in the right direction, the long game. Yeah. But they can comprehend it immediately. Yeah. That's my recommendation.
Shoot, even just compliments and encouragement are good little micro rewards for those short term. Like, so I'm thinking with my kids.
Once again, we can't abuse them. Yeah. We can't abuse, friendliness with our children. We can, or we can't abuse that. Maybe that's not the right word.
No, it's not the right word.
We can't abuse cheerleading.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We can't abuse cheerleading with our kids, and everything that they do is beautiful. Right? Yeah. No, that's just beautiful. Yeah. A piece of art that you just created. Yeah. What is it?
It's beautiful, whatever it is.
Yeah. No.
Yes, sir.
It's like that's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good.
But you're just talking about abusing.
And the other thing you have to be careful with is, you're telling your kid like, well, you're special. Yeah. Or you're so perfect.
Right. Yeah. And
it's like, no.
Yeah. So
you can get better.
Yeah. It gets,
you're marginal at best.
No, bro. No. Yeah, and when I mean encouragement and compliments, it's like if they do something good, you compliment that good thing. That's essentially it. And yeah, like anything, you can throw out too many, and you can throw out too little, really, because the fulfillment or satisfaction of receiving that compliment isn't big enough for the work that they just did. Be like, man, I don't want to do those 100. I made my daughter do 90 burpees the other day.
Why 90? Did you just want to withhold
the
century
I'm working
from her? No. She didn't get to 90 and say, hey, Dad, you do whatever you want. I'm getting 10 more. Watch this.
No.
We're getting to a hundo.
Well, here's the thing. She's done that before, but not with 90. So I'm working her up. I started from I was like, hey, when she was real small.
What was her time?
Oh, I didn't time it.
How are we going to recognize improvement?
Because we're going to get to the number first, then we go for time.
Got it.
So, I mean, that's the straight. I mean, it's not like, my life's mission, of course. It's just a fun little thing that I do. But if...
Sounds fun.
Yeah, one of them, sure. But so if I'm like, hey, you're super strong, they like that. Or my kids like that when you call them strong. So every time they do something like exercise or something like that, and they do a good workout or whatever, I'll say how strong they are or how strong they're looking or being or whatever. But if that feeling isn't enough to constitute that super hard work, like if I over push them, like 90, given where we are with burpees with her, she's not ready. She wasn't ready for 90 at this time. So
did she cry?
No, she didn't cry, thankfully. 'Cause she'll cry. No shame. She'll cry.
I went for a run with my youngest daughter. This is a while ago. I don't know how old she was at the time, but I was like, okay, we're going to start running because I wanted to improve her mile time at the school. I said, okay, you want to improve that mile time? I know how to do it. Here we go. So her mile time was weak, and I said, we can get it better. So the first run we went on, I'm not kidding. By the time we got 1 minute deep, she had tears welling up in her eyes.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, just keep going. But the point of saying this is when I try and give children, especially my children or any children, compliments, I try and compliment their hard work.
Yeah.
As opposed to you're strong or you're smart, what I say is you really worked hard for that and look at this great result. Yeah. Because what it makes them realize is that great results come from hard work. And guess what? That is the truth. Yeah. Because we all know people that were incredibly smart, incredibly strong, incredibly talented, and incredibly gifted, and they didn't do anything with any of those things because they didn't understand that they had to work hard. Even if you have all that skill, if you don't work hard, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Dang, that's a good little addition.
Lean towards complimenting the hard work.
Yeah.
And that's what you really want to see.
Yeah.
Let's face it. Let me ask you this. And this is a tough question. Would you rather have someone on your team that is extremely talented or extremely hard worker? Yeah. You know, of course, it's easy. We all want to say, well, I'd take the talent because we can make the person work hard, but that's actually not true.
No, it seems hard.
And the real talent, the best talent, really is you get someone that just knows how to grind and work hard.
Yeah.
Like, that's good. And that's going to be much more valuable than, hey, this person's super smart or, hey, this person's super strong. Occasionally you get someone like GSP, George St. Pierre, who was way talented in multiple modalities and was a hard worker. You know what that person becomes? A world champion.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a world champion that's just there because of hard work. Sometimes you get a world champion that's just there because of talent. Occasionally you get someone that's both, and they're usually sort of
they're more dominant.
Yeah, like a dominant champion.
Yeah, that's true, and that's good advice there to complement the hard work. I personally like both. I like especially with my son, like being strong and stuff. He really likes that, you know. So it's to the point where, like, if you help him do something, he'll get mad at you.
He kind of get mad at you.
Yeah, which I kind of like. I don't know where that's gonna lead, you know, but I like that currently. So he has that sense of pride, you know, where being strong is a good thing.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with that.
So yeah, but man, if you add the hard work part of it, because being strong is essentially a result, you know. Yeah. And he doesn't, obviously, he's two.
It's really gonna be easy connection for you to make because it's, hey, you're strong, and that's because you work hard.
Yeah.
Because the minute you say you're strong because you got good genes,
yeah.
Cool, I'll just sit over here and be strong.
It's true.
What do you got?
Yeah, it's true. And when you, especially if you don't recognize the hard work part of it, you know, and you just think as a kid, you're just rolling around strong. You're basically, you've reveled in the results for so long, where it's now when it's hard work time, it's kind of like, wait, I'm not used to that part of this whole thing.
They say that can happen to, they call them gazelles.
Yeah.
In buds, these are people that are like really fast, good athletes.
Yeah.
But they never lost before.
Yeah.
And when they start getting beat down, which you do get beat down, and they lose, they can't handle it mentally.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So.
Yes, sir. That is that's real. Next question. Jocko, my wife told me that she sees I am much more direct and less cordial than I used to be. I feel I've pushed too much into getting after it. And it makes those around me feel like I've changed to someone else.
Yeah. We have to be really careful, right?
Yes, sir.
Because being more direct and less cordial is definitely not getting after it. In fact, it's the opposite. if you are getting after it in a correct manner, your wife should be completely stoked.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have more time for her because you're going to be doing time management properly. Mm-hmm. You're going to be doing better at work, which means you're going to be getting promoted or whatever, getting paid more, or, getting job stability or whatever, something like that. You're going to be healthier because you're working out. You're going to be stronger because you're working out. You're going to be more organized with things. And you're going to be more thoughtful about building. That's what getting after is. Your relationship should be improving.
Yes.
Not this. And this is one of those. This is one of Echo Charles's favorite things to talk about. Or it's actually something that you've just brought up a bunch of times on the podcast, which is when someone says, that's just how I am. Like, you know what, Echo? I'm just going to tell you the truth because that's just how I am. Yep. Just making an excuse for being a jerk coming out of the gate, yes. Which is not good. So if that's what you're doing with your wife, you know what? I'm just going to get after it. Hey, this tuna casserole sucks. I'm just telling you the way it is. Yep. That's how I roll. Yep. Like, no, you're actually rolling in the wrong direction. When you're getting after it in a good way, your wife will be stoked. I was getting interviewed the other day, and I realized this. So I've written 8 books. The 8th one comes out in January of 2020. It's a lot of writing. I wrote 90% of the words in those books while my family was asleep. Damn. It made almost no impact on the family. I'm writing these books. Editing is a little bit different because there's a timeline on editing. So sometimes my family would be awake while I was editing and I had to get stuff turned back in, and it's a pain. Mm-hmm. But that's takes a week, right? But the other 90% of getting after it was done while my family is asleep. Mm-hmm. If you, contrarily, are getting after it at the expense of your family and friends, that's actually being selfish. So that's one part. Okay. So maybe you need to check yourself there and make sure that you've got your priorities in order. There is a chance, however, that your friends don't like seeing you start to get some altitude, right? Start to be more successful, start to lead a better life. There's all kinds of groups of people that will just drag you back down. They don't want to see you win. Yeah. That's sort of, I don't know. Is that the fundamental kind of baseline human instinct? I don't want to see you win.
If there's an element of it to I would not be surprised. Yeah. Put it that way, but I don't know.
There's at least a non-trivial part of the population that does not want to see you win.
Yeah.
There's at least a percentage, whatever that percentage is, of the people that you know that does not want to see you win. They would rather see you fail. They would rather, and maybe fail's not the word, but they would at least rather have you stay with them.
Yeah. That makes sense. Really.
So there's a chance that that's going on. Is there a chance that that's going on with your wife? Hopefully not. That's a slim chance. Yeah. Because if you think about it, your success, her success is predicated on your success. I mean, you are bound to each other. Each of your success is predicated on each other's success. Mm-hmm. So do I want my wife to be successful? Oh yeah, because that's my wife. Mm-hmm. And she's looking at me going, yes, go be successful. The more successful I am, the more successful she is. So there's most likely your wife, in my opinion, would be supportive of your efforts, unless you're just getting out of control. There's a chance, I guess, that a wife could see, someone change, and that's not the person that I married, right? But hold on, the person that you married was lazy. Yeah. And I'm over here getting after it. Mm-mm. The person that you married was making X amount of money, and I'm making a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. The person that you married wasn't in good physical shape. I'm in good physical shape. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, the wife would say, cool, yeah, I'm getting a better deal now. Occasionally, I think you would get a spouse, I guess it could be the male or the female, could happen on either side, that goes, oh, you want to work hard, and I'm really not looking to do that. I was comfortable. Yeah. Right? I was comfortable. That's it. Yeah. I'm comfortable. I don't want you getting all crazy. I'm over here being comfortable. So that could happen. I think that's unlikely. I think what's most likely is you are focused on yourself a little bit too much. Check yourself for that. That should be the first person you look at, you.
Yeah, that's true, huh? Because like this is actually kind of common where husband, wife, whichever the scenario is, where one, let's say two people, they get married, whatever. Years down the road, one of the people in the couple, the relationship, improves themselves a lot too, loses a bunch of weight. They're literally, by their own standard, they were not very attractive when they got married, but now this is 10 years later, whatever, they become straight up attractive now, making more money. More people want to hang out with them because they're nicer, like all this stuff. Straight up across the board improvement. Meanwhile, the other person in the relationship didn't do that. Still married, still all good, no infidelity, nothing like that. Still married. But that person who didn't improve themselves will feel like they got phased out, or kind of like the person might want to upgrade or something like that, you know? So it's like...
So there's a possibility they try and drag the person back down.
Yeah, because you need to be back here. I need to feel secure. Now I'm this husband, and now my wife's hot. I'm not used to a hot wife, because when we got married, you weren't that hot. I loved you for you, and you know, all this stuff. And you know what they say or whatever. And now you're I don't know. Well, you know, I don't know. I'm thinking of some cliche movie thing. But anyway, the wife's like all good looking now. People at the store are like complimenting her and all this stuff. And the guy's not used to it. And now in his mind, a little thing develops where it's like, like I'm not good enough now for this hot girl. And
I'm going to buy her some Cheetos.
Yeah, bring her back down. So like at least have some manageable amount of control. This person. That's not an uncommon thing in that specific scenario. I guess that scenario is not very common though.
It's not a very common scenario, and then it would have to be doubly uncommon for someone to actually want to drag them back down. I have to throw it out there though, because it is a possibility.
Yeah, but for this particular question, I don't think so. Only because this little indicator right here, my wife told me that she sees I am much more direct. And usually much more direct means insensitive in my experience. Wives don't do good, generally speaking, with insensitivity. Less cordial. That's another one. In my opinion, in my experience, because I'm married.
Yeah.
Less cordial is bad.
You learn things. Yeah. I'm going to give you an example. Something I learned about my wife. If my wife, if it isn't on the schedule, it's about enough to make my wife get mad, right? So in other words, if I said, hey, I'm going away for a month from now, I'm going away for 6 months on a work trip. I'll be back when I'm done with those 6 months. And when I'm gone, you're not going to be able to hear from me at all. She'd be like, okay, got it. When do you leave? And I'd say, well, I'm leaving whenever.
Yeah.
September 1st. Sure. And she'd go, okay. Yeah. She wouldn't be even remotely upset. She'd be good to go. Yeah. If it was Friday night and I came home and said, I didn't tell you, or Saturday night, I said, I didn't tell you, but I'm going over to Echoes to watch the UFC. There's a decent chance that she's mad about that. Yeah. Because she had in her mind that we were going to eat whatever. Yeah. We were going out for dinner or whatever. But I didn't give the pre-planned situation.
What if she didn't make a plan for that? It was just sort of maybe we could do that. But
it's not on her. It's on me. Yeah, it's on me for not informing her of what was going on, because it doesn't really matter. All she knew is that I was coming home and I was going to be around, and that was what was happening.
Yeah.
So anything that is not planned. You know what's really funny? This is, again, with my wife, and this is where it became evident to me. Even if it's something that is positive for my wife, if I don't give her pre-planning cycle on what's going to happen. So in other words, if I was flying home and I'd been gone for a week, and I got home and busted through the door and said, hey, I'm on a tail end of a 72-hour fast. I'm starving. I'm taking you out, and I made reservations for this really nice dinner. I'm going to go get some, a $200 steak now.
Some steak.
There's a chance. But the percentage should be 100% she's stoked, right?
Oh, good, yeah.
That should be the percentage. However, with my wife, there's a a 20 to 30% chance that she says, you know, I was going to take our daughter to, you know, the raffle, I don't know, to play bingo. And like, that is enough.
Yeah.
And what I don't do is I say, oh, cool, you know what, we'll go tomorrow. What I don't do is try and impose it.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is like lack of being cordial. What I'm saying is that it's not just like, that's one example of me not being cordial. So I try not to, I guess to sum it up, my wife doesn't really like surprises, right? She likes to have a plan. Yeah. She likes to know what's happening, and then she'll execute the plan. So that's what you got to be careful of.
Yeah.
What you got to be, well, not what you got to be careful of. That is one example of how these little things, they don't make sense. It doesn't make sense that my wife wouldn't be super stoked to go out to a awesome steakhouse. Yeah. That doesn't make sense to anyone.
Well, you know, that's a superficial thing.
And let me tell you something else that makes it a little bit tricky is I'm super insensitive to like changing plans. Like people change plans with me. I'm like, whatever. It's it's literally no factor. Yeah. Like, we've been planning to do this for 6 months. Someone's like, oh, I can't do it. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? It means nothing to me. Right. When things change, it means nothing. It has no impact on me. Yeah. I have no emotional reaction to someone saying, hey, we can't do this now. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to do something else. Yeah. So I'm at the other end of the spectrum. Yeah. Which means it took me a little while to figure out that, oh, this makes you mad. Yeah. Got it. Yep. Check.
And it's probably something like one level, like under the surface too. It's not like, hey, I had this good, you know, the raffle was planned in my head and that raffle's important. The raffle's not important. Neither is the dinner. It's like that part of it on that level is not important. It's one level deeper. It's the fact that I had this in my head. You didn't tell me this other thing. And now like what I had in my head really means nothing. Yeah. So it's kind of that.
Here's another funny thing about my wife is she's so into the planning thing that if I plan something, it has way more value to her. So in other words, if I say, hey, when I get back this Friday, I'm going to do a fast and I'm going to be super hungry. I'm going to make reservations for this Friday. Right. And we can go out and get an awesome steak, tomahawk, ribeye. And like the fact that it was pre-planned, like I've done this before where I've taken her and I've gotten reservations. And she'll be like, did you make reservations? And I'll say, yes. I'll be like, yeah, I did. And I can see like a little smile. Like I care a little bit more that I made those reservations. Like that's what the spontaneity thing? No. No points for spontaneity. No. Zero points for spontaneity. Only points for pre-planned fires.
You know why?
Why?
Because it's thoughtful.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. That's an interesting quality right there.
And I guess my point in saying these things is that everyone has these little personality traits. People you work with, people, your spouse, your children, they have these things. And if you figure out what those things are, you can actually utilize them to your advantage. And you can bypass things that will be problematic. And something that you've said too is you say, oh, you do this stuff to me, meaning Jocko I do some like leadership trick to you. Sure. And you know that I'm doing it, but it's still like it works and it still makes you feel the way that you know it's supposed to make you feel. And that's my point. Like my wife will listen to this. Yeah. And then I'll make reservations and she'll still be happy, even though that she knows that I'm doing it just because I know that it's going to be something that makes her happy. Yeah. Yep. So just because you reveal like, hey, I know this is what you're like, or even whether you reveal it or not, doesn't matter. Yeah. When someone has that characteristic, then you can utilize that characteristic. And I know that's not the best sounding word to talk about, like manipulating my wife's emotions. Yeah. But what I want to do is manipulate her emotions to make her feel happy about something.
In the right way.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep, it's a good thing.
So be cognizant when you're dealing with other human beings.
Yeah.
Look for these things. You see these things if you take a step back. If you don't take a step back, you'll never see them.
Yeah.
If you can't detach when you tell your wife something and you see that it makes her mad, if you can't detach, if you're talking to an employee and you see that they're getting frustrated and you can't detach to try and figure out what that is, you are not going to make any real progress.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
yeah,
check.
the direct thing. We like to be, or when people are direct to us, it makes things easier for us, But doesn't
Who's
mean
we? Wait, who's the we?
I don't
we're
know.
Talking about?
Whoever, people who
because here's the deal, man. Direct is a very blunt force tool.
Yeah.
And not many people wield it well, and not many people receive it well.
Yeah.
So if you're one of these people that, I just like to be direct.
Right.
That's not good. And very seldom do you end up in situations where you can just be direct with people. You have to have real, strong, built relationships with people where you can just be that blunt and direct with them. Mm-hmm. Now, there are methodologies where you can be direct without being direct. You can say things that are, hey, this is what we need to get done right now. You can take an edge off of it.
Yeah.
You can, and the way you usually do that is by taking ownership of what it is you're trying to make happen. So what I don't say is like, Echo, you need to get this thing edited tonight.
Yeah.
Right? I don't do that. I might say, hey, is there any chance we could get this thing edited tonight? Because if we don't, we're going to have a gap in releases, which, by the way, we haven't had.
And that's kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, see, even you just kind of know that it's a thing. It is, isn't it? Right? And all of a sudden we're there. And all of a sudden you want to edit that thing. Yeah. Not because I told you to, but because you want to keep the gaps from opening up.
Sure.
So I was directly telling you, but I was indirect.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do it, but you got to be careful with direct. Direct, it takes a long time to hone the scalpel of direct to where it just gets where you want it to cut and it doesn't leave any collateral damage. Yeah. Not many people are good at it.
Yeah.
Very few people are good at it.
Yeah. It's hard. Next question. Jocko.
And that makes people mad.
What does?
When you say, listen, you can't just throw it at people. People want to say, like, there's a book called Radical Frankness or something like that. That's not the name of the book, but it's something like that. It's like, hey, we just going to tell the total radical transparency or something like that. And it's like, we're just going to tell the truth all the time. And we can get there, but man, it is work.
Yeah. And
it's not even work that has to be that necessarily is the best use of work.
Yep.
So, yeah, I just know I hear people all the time, well, and people, that's what people want me to say. I'll go and work with a company. They're like, what we really need help with, we just need to really learn to be direct with each other.
Yeah.
And what they really should be saying is, what we need to do is we need to learn to communicate with each other, be open about what issues we have, how to solve those problems, and be more tactful in our discussions so that people are receptive.
Yeah.
Because think about what I just said. If it's not just about me being direct, the only way that I can be direct is if I have set you up in such a way that I've built you in such a way that you're receptive to my directness. Because me being direct without you being receptive, it doesn't work. And so often that's what I see. I see, hey, I'm direct, but you're not receptive. It's game over.
Yeah.
So even if I'm direct, I'm only 50% of the solution because you have to be receptive.
Yeah.
What's easier when I go indirect, I become 90% of the solution. Yeah. Because I'm going to get it into your brain without resistance.
Yeah.
So it's easier up front as me. I'll just be direct.
Yeah.
That's easy up front because I just say, Echo, you need to get this stuff edited.
Yep.
Now.
Direct.
That's direct.
Mm-hmm.
What are the chances of you being receptive to that? 50%.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas if let me rephrase that. In order for this to be effective, you have to be receptive to it.
Yep.
So I only have 50% of the solution. You have the other 50%. Whereas if I say, like I said before, hey, Echo, is there any chance we could get this done tonight? Because here's what's at stake. And I go indirect and I make that idea. I make your answer. You're going to give me the answer I want. Yeah. I know it can be edited tonight, right? I know that.
Yep. Makes sense.
And so you're actually going to tell me. I'm putting it into you. I'm giving you, all you have to do is just tell me. And now I'm the one that's receptive. Yep. Yes, we can. Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So that's something very important to talk about. If you want to talk about learning to be direct with each other, what you really have to learn is how to be receptive to directness. That's the long pole in the tent. Yeah. And that's what organizations are missing out on. Being direct is easy.
Yeah.
Being direct is the easiest thing in the world. Yeah. You tell people what you think. That's easy.
Yeah.
What's hard is setting the other person up, developing a relationship so that they're receptive to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Be careful.
I used to play football back in the day. And this new quarterback came in. What's weird is I forget his name. I'm just drawing a blank right now. But new young guy, tall, and he had a gun. If you're a quarterback and you have a gun, that's impressive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It means you throw far and fast. Here's the thing, though. Especially when you're new, and you have a gun, you're going to show that gun. You're going to be like when you're playing, when you're warming up before practice and stuff like that, you're throwing it and you're throwing it hard. So this guy was throwing it hard at me. I was a receiver. And we were just standing there. I wasn't running routes. So he's throwing it and it's hurting my hand to the point where I couldn't catch some of them because they were coming just too fast for that distance or whatever. And sure, I was impressed with this guy's gun, but when we'd want to run routes and stuff, he'd still kind of do that, I guess, maybe to impress the coaches. He's a young guy or whatever. And here's the thing, like, people would miss his balls. They wouldn't catch them because they're coming too hard. They're hurting your hands. They're messing you up, So it makes it really hard. Good. Hey, I get it. It's great practice for the receivers. Totally is. Mm-hmm. But as far as to effectively land a pass, to complete a pass, it doesn't work like that. And we had this other quarterback.
Hold on, Echo. Let me just stop you because you may have just made like the best analogy you've ever made on this podcast.
Right on.
That is it.
Cool.
If you can throw that thing direct, but if you're throwing it too hard and the person's not ready to receive it, right, not even to mention that you might not be ready you might be looking in the other direction. That thing hits you in the back of the head.
Yep.
What good is that direct comment? It's zero good.
It's not good. Hurting your hands when you try to receive it.
It hurts you. Yeah. And you don't want to hear anymore. You don't want any more to be thrown at you.
Nope.
Okay, proceed.
As opposed to this other quarterback who came in from Stanford.
Your hard work is paying off. That's right.
Thanks. I knew it would. So this other quarterback came in.
Did that quarterback make it anywhere? Did he make it to the NFL?
He did not make it to the NFL. Okay. No. So this other quarterback came in. His name is Tim Carey. Came from like Stanford, I think. And he came in. He was kind of the opposite. Actually, not the opposite because he could throw far and stuff. But the way he threw it was like. It was like the perfect pass. Like every distance had a different velocity on it. Mm-hmm. It was like that kind where he
modulated
so well.
Yeah.
He modulated so well.
Modulated the volume.
For those passes.
Directness.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Everything. And for them to get better, he would have to physically walk it and put it in your hand. It was like that good when it'd come, and when you have them side by side, oh man, I don't want that direct guy. I want the finesse guy, But he did have the capability.
Did he make it to the NFL?
I forget.
He left Stanford to come to your college?
I forget why, but I think it was a whole thing. There was a few Stanford guys that came. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
A few guys from Stanford that came to your school.
Played at UH. Yeah. It was during I want to say when we changed coaching staffs.
Oh, there might have been some scouts, connections.
Maybe like some relationships that were already there. Even some of the coaches, I think, came from that area. I don't know. I forget. That was a long time ago. But nonetheless, yeah, that's the way it shook out.
Check.
So there you go. Jocko, 13-year street cop here. My old man died when I was 10. It cut deep, and I grew up with no one. Having 2 boys of my own now and loving to get after it on the street, I worry about the risk. How do I balance being the spear with ensuring I stay around for that?
So, first of all, we have to recognize that there's no way that you can ensure that you stay around. And in fact, one day you will not be around. One day none of us will be around. That's the fact. And that actually doesn't matter what your job is. And there's all kinds of things, regardless of your job, whether you have a car accident, whether you have a heart attack, whether you have cancer or a plane crash or random violence or some random accident. There's all different kind of ways to die. Now, you are correct that the death rate of cops is higher. It's higher than a normal civilian. But what like loggers, construction workers, they all have higher rates of death than a cop. If you're a roofer, you have a higher rate of death than a cop. Anyone that drives for a living, whether they're a trucker or whether they're literally a traveling salesman, they have a higher rate of death than being police. So no matter what you do, there's a chance that you could die. And I'll tell you what, I think about this sometimes in the reverse of like, what scares you about what your kids do? If your kids are engaging in activity that could be dangerous, whether it's parachuting, whether it's rock climbing, whatever, like there's things that your kids could do that they could die. And what you could do is not allow them to do it, wrap them in bubble wrap, and not allow them to go anywhere. And guess what? Even if you do that, there's still a chance. And you've taken away, their growth. So you can look at it in the reverse as well, that there's some things that you're not going to be able to control. And no matter what, your kid you could say, I don't want my kid to join the military. And so they go to college, and what happens in college? They get hit by a drunk driver. There's enough bad things that can happen in either one of those situations. And same thing with you and your job. You could go get a job doing something, unless you get a job that's just straight up, in an administrative situation with very limited commute and very limited driving, then that might increase your chances a little bit. But then then are you doing something that you actually like to do? So there's your dilemma. So what do you do in a situation like this? What you do is you train and you prepare and you're vigilant and you take care of your sons, obviously, and you would explain your job to them, and you explain to them why you train hard, and you explain to them why you're willing to make a sacrifice to keep others safe, including them. You work every day to keep them safe as well. And if you explain that to your sons, they will grow up with an understanding of service and discipline and duty and courage and honor. And by the way, if something did happen to you, the model that you set for them would have massive impact, on them and how they would live their lives. And I believe it would be actually a positive impact. Sure, would they miss you? Absolutely. Sure, would they wish more than anything that you could be back? Yes. But would they recognize that their dad made this sacrifice? Yes, they would. Would they live to honor that sacrifice? Yes, they would. So that's one thing you can do if you want to keep that profession. Now, if you can't get around that, if that doesn't make sense, which it's understandable. If you look at me and say, hey, Jocko, I get it. I want my kids to be raised with honor, but I'd want to be there, and that's more important to me. And if that's where you end up, then what you have to do is plot out what another job, what another career is going to be. And like I said, then you have to make it doing something that legitimately gets you into a better survival rate, which, by the way, outlaws just about every outdoor job you could have. So if you work in construction, nope, that's not it. Working as an electrician, nope, that's not it. Working as a lineman, nope, that's not it. All those jobs, all those outdoor jobs, go look at the statistics. Go Google death rates in jobs. And there's all kinds of fishermen. No, forget about it. There's so many jobs that have a high death rate where accidents happen. So what you're talking about going into, the life you're going into, would be an administrative job of some kind. And if you think you can do that and you think that'll give you the satisfaction that you want, then it's a possibility. Think about it. But if you look at it and you think, you know what, that's not for me, then train hard, prepare, build a great relationship with your sons, stay vigilant, don't get complacent ever, and be aggressive. I have to throw that one in there because, in my opinion, when an individual gets scared or gets hesitant or gets overprotective of themselves, I believe they're in more danger, not less danger, and more danger. So if you think that having kids, having your sons is making you less aggressive and more scared, I think you're at higher risk. So if you're going to do the job, you do the job. You get aggressive when you do the job. And if you can't, then you might want to look and see if there's other alternatives that are out there. The other thing I would say is this: how often, like, you're a street cop, you've been there for 13 years. Is there another department you could go to? Is there some other way to serve and stay connected? Use your experience in another way. Maybe an area that has a little less probability of getting killed. Again, you got to look if that's something you'd really want to do. So ultimately, and I tell this to people a lot, is there's only one person that can make this decision, and it's not me. The only person that can make this decision is you. So think through it, be thoughtful. You can even talk about it with your boys, depending on how old they are. But you can talk about it with them, explain to them, and, see what they say. Obviously there's one way that conversation could go. Hey, would you guys want me to die? Right? Of course. What are they going to say? Oh my gosh, quit that job immediately. We don't want you to do that. Right? So you're going to have to think about, I don't know what the ages of your kids are, but you're going to have to think through that one, how you address it with them. But certainly, I always look at it that there's risk at everything you do. You might as well take risk doing something that you love doing and that is helping other people and is setting a good example for your boys. And if that doesn't make sense, cool. Find a different job.
Next question. I was a young boy living in a foster home and was sexually assaulted by my foster father and sometimes other people over a course of a couple years. I was eventually adopted, and what had happened to me was never discussed, and I never got help for it. I was afraid of everything, and eventually I played sports in high school and felt less afraid. Went into the Army and felt completely unafraid of anything. When I got out, I got into a long-term relationship. I told my then girlfriend what had happened to me. She was the first person I ever told about this. She convinced me to reach out to my foster parents, and I did, and it was a total disaster. They kept my room where all this bad stuff had happened exactly the same as it was 20 years prior when these horrors had occurred. I had my moment to confront this monster that had done this to me, and I failed. I used a word that he always said to me, when he was assaulting me. He just said, "Sometimes people change." All of a sudden, I was a weak young boy again, and I couldn't fight back. I left the house and had serious self-doubt. Eventually, I became a cop and then a detective and have faced all types of bad people, from junkies to murderers. I even get full confessions out of child rapists. I'm sick to my stomach afterwards. It's terrible to hear what these animals do. My question is this. Recently, the past has come back with a vengeance. I can't get through a short time, maybe an hour or two, without thinking about the past and my failure. The only time I have peace is when I absolutely destroy myself working out. I consider it punishing myself and feel better when I do it. How can I stop this, or at least manage it better?
So this is, obviously a horrible situation, and, horrible that you had to live through this and that any kid or any human would have to go through this. As far as how you can manage this better, I'm going to go a little bit here. So one of the blocks of training that we go through in a SEAL platoon is called close quarters combat. And this is the training. You're in a thing called the kill house. It's ballistic walls. There's targets in there. You're moving around dynamically. You're shooting live fire ammunition. There's people 6 inches away from you. You're taking really close shots. There's a lot of pressure in there. There's a lot of details, a lot of standard operating procedures and safety procedures that you have to follow. There's a lot of process. It's like, do you need to go left or right? Is that a good guy or a bad guy? Because you have to identify the targets. Should you move or should you stay? How do you communicate that you need to move? Should you shoot or should you not shoot at a target? And so there's all these things going on when you enter a room. All these things that you have to go through. All these steps that you have to take. All these procedures that you have to follow. All these decisions that you have to make. And it all happens in a split second. And so in a kill house, the training cadre is actually above you. It's not a normal house. The rooms have what we call catwalks above them. So the cadre can be up above you in the catwalks, and they're walking around and they're watching you very closely. It's like watching a football game on TV. You're seeing it from like the perfect view above the person, and they're in the room with you, but they're not in your way at all because they're up on the catwalk. So what happens is when a room entry happens, you catch a lot of critique from the people in the catwalk. And they'll say, you could have done this, or you could have done that, or you could have moved left, or you should have pushed forward, or it would have been better if you'd done this other thing. So there's all these different things. And when my cadre was running it, that's what we do. That's what happened to me when I was cadre. That's what I would do. That's what everyone does. And at some point I kind of realized that all that stuff is good, and I get it. Like, you got to get people to run the procedures correctly. But at a certain point, what I would tell guys, like after a guy was kind of beat down, like he just couldn't get something right, or he would, a bunch of people would jump on him about a decision that he made or a movement that he made or whatever. And I'm not talking about a safety thing, because a safety thing is different. I'm talking about a tactical decision. And when you walk into a room, there's a bunch of tactical decisions you can make. And if there's 5 different decisions that you could make when you walk into a room, there's something that there's one way of doing it that would be like really clean. One would be a little bit less. One might be just as clean as the first one, but it's a different attitude. There's just all these different decisions that you could make. It's like just a multitude of ways that you could react, because that's what this question is: how you reacted in this situation. And eventually, as I would see this with an individual, I would eventually, what I would tell guys is, listen, you did what you did. You did what you did. That's what you did. That's the decision that you made at the time. And you know what? There's different ways you could have done it. You don't like the way you did it. I don't like the way you did it. One of the other cadre members doesn't like the way you did it. It doesn't, what I'm saying, it doesn't really matter. Here, first of all, you can't take it back. You can't go back and undo it. And by the way, you don't get to rehearse these things to a point where you get to do this perfectly, because you won't be able to do that. If you rehearsed a move in a room that you had seen before and you rehearsed it 10 times, that's a totally different game, right? If I already know what the room consists of and I'm going to rehearse and choreograph the entire movement, that's a different game. That's not decision making. That's just rote memorization. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how did you react, and what you did is what you did, and you did it for a reason. What you saw in front of you, you made this decision for a reason. Maybe you saw a threat when there wasn't one there, or you lost situational awareness, or you rushed. You went too fast. You tried to rush, and all those things can kind of trip you up. But that's what you did, and you did what you did, and you can't take it back. So instead of everyone sitting there saying you should have done this and you should have done that, let's do this. Let's see what we can learn from it. Let's see why you did what you did. Let's see why you made that decision. Because once we know why you did something, now we have something that we can work with. We have something that we can improve upon. That is what I think you need to do in this situation. And really, when anyone makes a mistake or has a reaction that they don't like, you can't worry. You can't continue to worry about something that has already transpired. What you have to do is you have to look at it and say, what can I learn from it? What can I take from this? And how can I take this mistake and make me better? So you could look at this. Why did you do that? Right? Maybe you did it because you didn't want to open up these old wounds. Maybe you did it because you confronting this individual would have caused more drama, and that drama you at that moment you assessed and said, you know what? This drama isn't worth it. Maybe you protected yourself from more drama, and that was your instinct. And maybe if you would have started confronting this guy and going crazy, who knows what could have happened. And maybe it could have taken a turn for the worse. We don't know what the outcome was. We know that you weren't happy with your decision. Understandable. But we don't even know what the other decisions would have led to. So where you're actually getting bogged down and distraught about something that you don't even know if it was a good decision or a bad decision. It feels like it was a bad decision, but you don't know what the outcomes of the other decisions even were. So you can't change the outcome of what happened in the past. You can't do it. But what you can do is you can grow from it. That's what you can do. You can learn from it. You can actually take that scenario and you can mentally replay it in your head, and you can figure out if possibly there would have been or could have been a better outcome. Or maybe that outcome that you had wasn't that bad, or maybe it leads somewhere else. We don't know yet. But that's where you are at right now. You can't change the outcome of something that has occurred in the past. Now, I'm gonna throw a little dichotomy at you right now. And I'm gonna say something that's might be a little bit hard to understand, and I'm gonna try and talk my way through it. Because while you can't change the past, what you can change is you can absolutely change the way that the past is perceived. So let me give you a detached example, just another example. If you had an individual, someone gets fired from a job. They get fired from their job, and when they get fired from the job, what it does is their confidence goes down, and they get depressed, and they decide they're not going to even apply for a new job because I don't even know if I deserve to get a new job, and they sit around, and eventually they go out and apply for kind of like a lesser job. And, who knows, maybe they start drinking to relieve some of their depression, and now they're late, and now they end up on a downward spiral. We would look at them being fired as something that destroyed them and ruined their life. That's how we would perceive it. Hey, the individual they were doing fine, then they got fired, and now they lost their confidence, they got depressed, they started drinking, they didn't apply for good jobs, and now their life is totally different and it's a bad place. We would perceive that them getting fired did that to them. But if a person got fired from their job and instead it was like a wake-up call for them, and they immediately applied for a bunch of other jobs, and maybe they didn't get those because they had just been fired, but maybe they took a lesser job, a lower paying job, but they got in there and they had realized they had made a mistake and they started getting after that like they'd never gotten after it before. They started working as hard as they possibly could and got promoted, and then got promoted again and just dominated in those positions and went even harder and dominated even more and eventually took over the whole company. And this isn't crazy. This isn't too far-fetched. This can happen. But if that happened, that same incident, the firing of this individual, would be perceived in a totally different way. It would be perceived as a catalyst that changed their life for the better. And there are all kinds of examples like that in the world. The past can't be changed, but the past can change you for the better, or it can change you for the worse. And my question is, why not make it for the better? Why not make the past change you for the better? You hear the term narrative thrown around these days, especially like in political circles. You'll hear it on the news that narratives, they're created in the political arena. And what the narrative does is it supports an overarching aim or an overarching value or an overarching goal. That's the way people use the term narrative right now. But I'm not talking about that type of political narrative. What I'm saying here is that you actually write the narrative of what happened in your past. I'm not talking about a fabrication of it. I'm talking you get to write the narrative of where it takes you. You get to write the narrative. You get to write the reality of where you end up. You get to write it. You get to control it. So what I'm saying is control it. Get control of that narrative. Take control of that narrative. That horrible story in your past ends the way that you want it to end. You control the narrative. You control that story, so make that story good. Make that story epic. Make that story and make the direction that your life goes, make it heroic. And that's how I think you can get control or maybe handle better some of that horrific stuff that you've been through. And I think that's all I've got for tonight. So, Echo Charles, speaking of being heroic,
yes.
Speaking of controlling our own narrative of the past, of the present, of the future, what can we do to write that heroic story for ourselves?
Yes. Well, let's start with the path. We're going to stay on the path. We're going to get on the path. We're going to be on the path. So part of the path is jiu-jitsu, of course, like we've said many times. You're going to need a gi. What gi to get?
I got interviewed the other day.
Cool.
And the guy kind of sets up this kind of big question.
Sure.
He says, in this day and age, and I'm not going to do him justice. It was a great question. It was a nice question. I get it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do it as eloquently as he did it. But the question was about, in this day and age, when men, and it was one of those like men like type things. this day and age when men are, can be isolated and can get depressed and don't have meaning and all this stuff, right?
Sure.
What do you recommend to men that feel that way, that feel isolated and feel alone and feel depressed and feel like they don't have meaning in their life and feel like they can't connect with anyone? And I was like, oh, cool, yeah, go to jiu-jitsu classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I felt bad,
right?
Because they wanted me to give like the big, profound thing about where to find meaning in your life.
Yeah.
And what I said was, start training jiu-jitsu. Because the thing that he grabbed me with is like, oh, you want to have a goal, you want to have meaning, you want to connect with people, you don't want to be alone, loneliness and all this stuff. I'm like, go train jiu-jitsu. All those problems get solved right there.
Yeah, they do.
Right? All of a sudden you got people to hang out with, you got a mission, you got fitness going on, you got meaning. It's all kinds of good stuff going on.
Yeah.
So go train some jiu-jitsu is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And
good place to start.
That's one of those deals too with like you leave jiu-jitsu with something. Not just fitness and better health and stuff. You leave with like a skill that just feeds into your whole soul, especially the manliness thing. The capability to defeat another man. Yeah. In a fight.
And we'll have to check in with some of our females, because when I talk to our female jiu-jitsu practitioners, they might even feel a little bit better because they get to like choke men.
Yep, no doubt about it.
So, yeah. So what we're saying basically is try training some jiu-jitsu. Look, is it a cure-all?
Yeah, kind of.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah. For certain people, in certain situations, I think so.
I have a feeling when I leave jiu-jitsu after I get done training that I feel good.
Yes, sir.
Just think about that. Think if I gave you a pill that said, oh, if you just take this pill, you'll feel good. Yeah. You'll just feel good.
Yeah.
But in fact, the only side effects are that you'll be a little healthier and you'll have a quality skill that you can utilize in the real world. Just take this pill. Would you take the pill? Who wouldn't?
Sure.
What I'm saying is you get to go to jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Is it harder than taking a pill? Sure. But is it harder to eat a steak or eat a pill?
Steak.
Technically, it's harder to eat a steak. Which one would you rather do?
Eat a steak.
I'd rather eat a steak, and I'd rather train jiu-jitsu than take a pill.
Me too.
So get on that train, the jiu-jitsu train.
Get on the jiu-jitsu train, and you're going to do gi and no gi. So what kind of gi to get? You get the best gi. Question, answer.
I realized I like dramatically interrupting you sometimes.
Yeah, man. It's good. I dig it too sometimes. It's all good. So the gi origin.
Yes.
Originmain.com. This is where you can get your gi. Many different options. They come out with new ones. It's pretty cool. Pete's very creative with that stuff.
Yeah.
I encourage Pete to continue that creativity and keep it on that level as well. Anyway.
Don't encourage him.
No. Encourage, and compliment as well. So, yes, originmain.com. You can get your gi. You can get a rash guard too if you want. Also, some shirts on there, some joggers and whatnot. Supplements as well.
What about what if you were going to go see a movie? Can you wear your gi to a movie?
Well, no.
Okay, can you wear your gi to a dinner date with your wife?
No, you can't.
So what do we do with Origin then?
All right. Yes, well, the good news is we got some American denim. We got jeans.
Some jeans.
Yep, Origin jeans. Boom. Yeah, those are good, man. Those came out really, really good. Yeah. I think those are going to go places.
Yeah. This one, I will give Pete some leeway for his creativity.
Oh, yeah.
Because he did this thing with the yoke of the jeans. You know what the yoke is?
No.
It's a little piece of it's like right below the waistband. And there's two types of different yokes you can have. Reverse yoke or regular yoke, I guess it's called. Anyways, it makes it so that the pants fit a certain way. Yeah. And then he lined up the tops of the pockets with the reverse yoke, which means that they're slanted a little bit, like the old school Vietnam pockets.
Okay.
So anyways, that's cool.
They're legit.
Yeah, they're just like a little bit.
See, you know what I'm gathering?
Details going on.
I'm gathering that you're starting to appreciate Pete's fashion sense. That's what I'm gathering.
Don't get crazy. I'm saying occasionally. No. Because here's the deal: the pockets, because they're at a little angle, they're easier to get your hand in and out of. Which what I'm saying is there is a functionality. Because if it wasn't functional, I wouldn't be talking about it right now.
No.
Because we don't talk about things like that.
But they look dope is what I'm saying. I think you're starting to appreciate that on a
what
level.
I'm saying is I think Pete did it not for functionality. I think Pete did it because it looked cool. And then I commend his creativity because not because it looked cool, but because it provides a level of functionality that does not previously exist in jeans anywhere.
Boom.
So
hey, man, I agree with you. I agree with the whole deal, the whole gig. And, man, yeah, those are good. American denim, by the way, all made in America.
Yes.
The cotton is made in America, grown.
What about the things that you fasten your waist with?
The buttons.
Yeah, the buttons.
Origin buttons.
Cotton.
Just look at a picture of the buttons. That's enough to be like all sold to begin with. They're pretty dope. They're very dope, actually.
Plus,
anyway.
We got supplements, as you were just about to say.
Yes, supplements. Important supplements. Not this Mega Mass. What was that one from old school?
Mega Mass something.
It was a big number. Nonetheless, it's not like that. Well, I guess kind of, because milk is additional way cleaner. Clean protein, slow release. Brian did a really good.
But let's face it, it just tastes good.
Yeah.
It doesn't just taste good. It tastes good. That might be, what's that word? That might be the number one priority or the number one benefit. The fact that it's the best protein you can actually get is awesome too.
Yeah, cool. Well, you can eat a steak if you want protein as well. So there's various.
But you can't always eat a steak. That's the problem. Sometimes you're like on the go. Yeah. Sometimes you got to get. Sometimes you got work to do. Yeah. You don't have time to eat a steak.
Sometimes you just want a dessert too. Let's face it. Yeah. Come on, bro. Let's face it. So
I
boom.
am definitely facing it.
There you go. So yeah, so milk is like that. But the joint warfare, krill oil, these are for your joints. Keep your joints in the game. Mm-hmm. If you're for real getting after it, like especially in the gym and doing jiu-jitsu, man, the joint warfare and the krill oil is gonna keep you in the game big time. It's gonna help you out a lot. Time. Huge time, as we say.
Don't forget about the Warrior Kid milk as well.
Yeah, that's a good
which is tasty. And why not feed your kids something that's actually going to be good for them instead of feeding them literal poison?
Yeah, gummy bears.
Yeah, sugar.
Some crap. Unless yes, and discipline as well. If you want some cognitive enhancing elements infused into your brain, get some discipline. That's a good one.
Get yourself some Jocko white tea as well.
Yeah,
that's if you want to have a massive deadlift in excess of 8,000 pounds. Check.
Yeah. Also, it's certified organic, so that's something. Also, we have a store. It's called Jocko Store. You can get the tea on the store too. We have the tea on the store, but also on the store, jockostore.com. This is where you can get shirts if you want to represent on the path. Discipline equals freedom. Even get after it. Simple stuff. I chose quality shirts over cheap quantity shirts.
Indeed.
So when you get this shirt,
as
it should be, right? So if you get this shirt and you recognize that, dang, this could very well be my favorite shirt just to wear, just the fit and the feel of the shirt, I won't be surprised. In fact, I'd be surprised if it's not. That's my opinion. Nonetheless, there's some good stuff on there. There's rash guards on there, some hats, flex fit, and snapback trucker hats. Some hoodies, lightweight and heavyweight. Some good stuff on there. Anyway, if you want something, get something. It is jockostore.com.
Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you want to go ahead and smash the subscribe button.
Bro, we're not doing that anymore.
That joke over?
That was the last one.
The last one?
Yeah.
All right, no more. So if you want to subscribe, you can click the subscribe button.
Yeah. I guess if you're going to remind someone to do something in regards to subscribing, it'd be more on the YouTube thing to do the notification bell if they want to be notified, because that's not just a given when you subscribe. I don't know. Some people might not know that. This is what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm definitely a person that did not know that.
All right. Well, there you go. So yeah, subscribe, whatever. Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, don't forget the Warrior Kid podcast.
3 new releases.
Yep. 24, 25, and 26.
Boom.
Including an interview with John Bozak, the illustrator, the drawer of pictures of all the Warrior Kid books, including Mikey and the Dragons. Solid. Anyway, yeah, very interesting on that one, especially if you're into any kind of creative thing. It kind of demonstrates it or talks about the process and the frustration. It's good. I actually liked it a lot. Also, Warrior Kid soap. IrishOaksRanch.com. This is where you can get Jocko soap, Trooper soap, all made by Warrior Kid Aiden in the United States, by the way.
Does he have some kind of motto or anything with that?
Yeah, like it's a slogan. We'll call it a slogan. Stay clean. Sorry, bro, I don't say it all like crazy like you. Whatever, but best stay clean, simple, to the point, right?
Yeah.
All good.
I was not impressed with
I know.
your job there.
I'm doing the best I can, Anyway, like I mentioned, we have a YouTube channel as well, Jocko Podcast YouTube channel. If you are interested in the video version of this here situation, and some excerpts on there, some enhanced excerpts on there too. If you want to look at them, it's good.
Psychological Warfare, it's out there. iTunes, Google Play, MP3, get it. Don't forget about the visual versions of Psychological Warfare from flipsidecanvas.com, which is run by my brother Dakota Meyer. Mm-hmm. You might want to check that one out as well. Yeah. Get Discipline Equals Freedom. Art.
Yeah. We have posters, right? Which is cool. Like, you hang them in your gym and whatever, but it's like 1, 2, maybe 3 levels higher than the poster is like, the kind you hang on your wall in your home.
Yeah, you could put it up in your office. Clearly, you could you could put these things up. They are legit. And we got some Warrior Kid posters, art coming as well, because they're not just posters. They're legit.
Yeah, they're like, the quality. Also, onit.com/Jocko. Go there, King. On it, this is where you can get kettlebells, like fitness stuff. So some cool supplements, some greens, some food items. This is where I get my kettlebells. But actually, like pretty much all my home gym stuff, aside from like the dumbbell sets, I get from On It. All of it. Go on there, onit.com/Jocko. Get something.
And got some books too. I've written a bunch of them. Way the Warrior Kid, Where There's a Will. That's number 3 of that book. That is live, so get that for your kid. Also get the Way of the Warrior Kid 1 and Way of the Warrior Kid 2, which is called Mark's Mission. These books are good. Man, these are the books I wish I had when I was a kid. They would have just put me on the path at a younger age. Mikey and the Dragons, you can order that one now as well. That is for a little bit younger age, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sure.
Through 70.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yes.
Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. All the little questions that you want to ask me about everything is answered in that book. The Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. How to get after it. The audio version is not on Audible. It's on iTunes. It's on Amazon Music. It's on Google Play. Other MP3s. And those are questions that you might have about life, about my personal operating system. If you have questions about leadership, check out Extreme Ownership and The Dichotomy of Leadership. I referenced them both today, and I reference them all the time. Written by me and my brother Leif Babin about the experiences we had overseas and how you can take those experiences and apply them to the leadership in your life and world. We also have Echelon Front, which is our leadership consultancy. We solve problems through leadership. You can go to echelonfront.com for details on that. If you want to get some additional training online, you can go to efonline.com, and that's where we have all the Echelon Front instructors teaching classes online, interactive classes. Check that one out if you want to go more granular. And then we have the Muster, which is a conference, a gathering, a leadership gathering. The next one is in Denver, September 19th and 20th. And then in Sydney, Australia, December 4th and 5th. Check extremeownership.com for details. All of the musters have sold out, and these will too. So get there early. And of course, we have EF Overwatch, where we are taking spec ops and combat aviation leaders and placing them into civilian companies that need leadership. EFOverwatch.com if you want to hire someone from special operations or your former special operations and you would like to work in the civilian sector. Go to EFOverwatch.com, follow the instructions, we will hook it up. And if you feel like you want to cruise with us just a little bit more, You can find us both on the interwebs. On Twitter, on Instagram, and on the Facebook. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And thanks to all of you that make this podcast possible. First, those of you in the armed services who put your honor and duty above yourselves and protect freedom around the world. And to all the police officers and law enforcement, to the firefighters, the paramedics, the EMTs, the dispatchers, the correctional officers, the Border Patrol, Secret Service, and all the other first responders. Each of you do the same. You place the welfare of others above the welfare of yourself in order to keep us safe. So thanks for what you do. And the rest of you that are out there, thanks for the support that you all give us. You are the fuel that keeps this train moving. Literally. We appreciate it. And also remember this, no matter what happened in the past, you control the narrative. You write the story that you want to write. You give yourself the role that you want. Make your thoughts in that story filled with discipline. And make your actions, make them nothing short of heroic. And then step out into the world and get after it. And until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.